Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is and always will be George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
I felt that that's where that was going to go. I was just like, George isn't about to leap in with something, so he's doing the whole, I'll pause to let them talk. And then Adam didn't say anything, and I was like, it's funnier if now I don't say anything, and here we are.
Explain the joke. It's much more funny.
Adam was so uncomfortable. I bet if we go back to the recording, it was like 2 seconds maximum, and Adam was just like, so uncomfortable with radio silence, need to laugh, cannot possibly bear it.
Cannot have dead. Well, that was the first thing they taught us at Radio Monash, which was don't have dead air. And we've listened to that advice aggressively over the last 13 years to the point where there is no dead air. There is just only white noise.
White noise being white men speaking over one another.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Some would say we weaponized that information of having no dead air, maybe to the detriment of the actual quality of the podcast, but that's not.
I notice it. I notice it a lot when I listen to other podcasts where I'm just like, oh, there was a long sort of silence there. Like someone said something and it just hangs in the air a bit and you hear like, well, moving on. Like, if it's the dollop or something, then Dave Anthony will continue. And I'm like, holy shit, dead air in a podcast. Who'd have thought?
There is a reason that I listen to other people's podcasts on 2 times speed, and I am unable to do that with ours because we are speaking already at 2 times speed. So
it's all that meth we took before the show. I mean, what? Sorry, what? We are, of course, a news and politics podcast, and we're here to fill your ear holes this week with the juiciest of news from Australia and around the world. And the first story this week is that turns out if you release a bunch of detainees, that you're going to have issues with their visas because last week we talked about how the High Court had not reversed, but they kind of did reverse. They made a new decision that basically indefinite detention in Australia was illegal. And as a result, the government were like, what are they going to do? Are they going to release the people? We don't know. Turns out they had to release the people, and they did so.
Yeah, within about a week, they'd released like 80 people.
93, I think it was up to
93. Okay, yeah.
And it did not go smoothly.
No.
According to this article.
Well, no. It's pretty funny because I thought some of them were released on like bridging visas or just like the kind of generally temporary ones while they still process some sort of stuff. But no, it seems like in this case they just without them. So I don't know, is that like entrapment? It's like you can leave infinite detention, but you'll be without a visa just wandering around in Australia, which is a crime.
Well, yeah, so a letter provided to some of the detainees upon release, which the ABC has seen. There's an article from the ABC. I'm not vicariously living through the ABC for the purposes of this art. Which the ABC has seen, stated their status, quote, at least for now, unquote, was as an unlawful non-citizen. So
that's some 1984 sounding shit.
Yeah, it's like, we can't detain you, but you're also not allowed to be here. Good luck.
Yes. Yeah.
Off your pop.
So that's what I mean. It's like you can leave prison by committing a crime, and we will stand at the door and wait to watch whether or not you decide to stay in prison or commit a crime, in which case down on the ground, taser.
Stop resisting. Taser.
So this is as of Wednesday. So as of Wednesday, there were 92 people that had affected and 83 had been released. And then some of those were released with this letter and then subsequently given bridging visas after the fact.
But the government was saying at the time, like, no, don't worry, everyone, it's fine. They've all got bridging visas. And the ABC is like, well, we have at least a dozen people here that we've confirmed do not have bridging visas. And they're like, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
Well, yeah, it really feels like they're also going to do who are you going to believe, because they've it seems the government has very much liked to highlight that some of these people have committed crimes.
Well, yeah, so the Dutton far right Liberal Party has made hay whilst the sun was invariably very brightly shining this week, and and decided to make this a big political issue. So even though I criticised that journalist for making it about the horse race commentary last week in that article, it did definitely turn into like the horse race political fallout. It was the dominant sort of factor in the headlines this week of like what's, the LNP criticizing the government for handling it and how they handled it. So maybe that's my fault that I was too vociferous in my critique, because it ended up being the news this week. So
Australians love a fucking horse race, right? Like every year we're like, oh, it's pretty. Every time spring rolls around, spring racing carnivals obviously start out all over the east coast of Australia, and then we're always like, oh, it's we should really think about how we treat horses. And then 20 seconds later, the sports bet ads hit your feed, and you're like, guess I'm getting on the quad. Let's go.
Have you tried to reach around on a three-way multi? So
we love a horse race. So that analogy applies to political circumstances as well.
We love a horse race so much that Melbourne is the only city in the world, as far as I'm aware, that has a national public holiday for the Melbourne Cup, which is a horse race. So that's how much we love a good horse race.
Right. So what you're saying is, though, if we love a horse race so much, we could really liven up this debate, this political point scoring, if we just bring out the tarp and the shotgun.
Okay, that's one way to handle it.
I mean, that's a side way.
It ain't a horse race till you've shot a horse on the track, if you ask me.
Oh, well, that's a grim reminder of the dark realities of horse racing. Thanks, Tom.
Of why we talk about maybe horse racing shouldn't be a thing before sports bet gets involved.
And this is a Checks Notes comedy podcast. Cool.
I was going to go. I mean, maybe we should open up the sports bet app to the Liberal Party versus Labor and the Greens and Independents, and you can have a quaddie going in the Parliament of Australia, because who knows what might happen.
Anyway, they released these detainees, and I just saw an article about 4 hours ago from the ABC that says there might be another 250 that might be also affected as a result of this High Court decision. But essentially, if you don't know the story, there was this case where that sort of challenged the prevailing assumption that indefinite detention was allowed. That Australia had several people that, even though they had sort of served their time for their criminal sentence, they were denied visas to rejoin the Australian, rest of the Australian community, and so they were sort of held in this indefinite detention sort of limbo. Anyway, the court overturned that case, and I guess the ruling was issued much faster than the government was intending, so they were caught off guard. Now, the government will say, no, we weren't caught off guard. We were just not ready when the thing came out when it did. And essentially, because the High Court hadn't provided the reasoning for their decision, that's going to come early next year, the government was then in a very awkward position of being forced to create legislation to bridge the gap without knowing exactly what the High Court, like on what grounds, what specific areas of the current legislation the High Court objected to. So I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a little bit the High Court's fault to be like, this isn't legal and we're not going to tell you why. I'll never tell. I'm a very saucy court.
See, I guess I kind of love that in a way. It's like a bit of a test of the government to be like, keeping people in forever prison isn't constitutional. Fix it. They're like, what about it isn't constitutional? Like, if it's not evident to you,
2 words sounds like war crimes.
Yeah. And I thought there was a comment from I forget his position, surname's Giles.
Andrew Giles is the immigration minister.
Giles, yeah, the immigration minister. I thought saying something like, while the government argued heavily against like the High Court's decision, we've, released these people. It's like, don't worry, everybody. We insisted we should still be allowed to do the illegal thing. But you got us.
Yeah, there was a clip of Claire O'Neill going around basically being like, we didn't want this. If it was up to us, they'd all still be in jail. Cool.
Yeah, for us, we'd still be holding them forever in detention.
I guess, like, see, the thing is, the way the reporting about all of this has made it sound is like there's just a bunch of child molesters that have been like let loose on the city, Arkham Asylum style. The gates have been opened. The madness rips across the city of Gotham. There have been, and they did say that, of the 93 people that were released, there were, quote unquote, several of them who had been guilty of child sex offenses, 3 murderers. So obviously not great. And that's the element that Peter Dutton and the Liberal Party sort of seized upon, is that, Labor's let floodgates open. It's just going to be Sudanese gangs knocking at your door. Again, like, that's the sort of angle that they've come at it from. But like, surely if we all just take a breath and take a one step back, surely we can agree that from a legal standpoint, it makes sense that indefinite detention is, of course, not a legal just thing to do. And like, I understand that like nobody likes the idea that child molesters have been released from detention, but also like
they weren't in detention for child molesting.
If they were, then they've served their time and they now need to be reintegrated into the community. Yeah. So it's like, I understand we're all like uncomfortable with the idea of crime and criminals being released from prison, especially when it's to do with sexual offenses or violent murder or things like that, violent crime. Like, obviously there should be some trepidation about how we properly reintegrate those people into society in a way that keeps the community safe, right? Like, obviously there should be a discussion about that. But we're talking about a broader principle here of like, but like there's like, I hate to tell you guys, there's people who murdered and molested kids that are being released from prison every day. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, that's happening daily, is that people like that are being reintegrated into the community, because that's what the prison system is not meant to be an indefinite holding facility where anyone who's ever done anything that makes us feel icky lives forever. Like, that's not what the prison system is, nor what it should be. So it's like, I think we're just like, the Australian public this week kind of like woke up to the fact that people get released from prison. And that's what they're like, oh, no, kids have been there forever. It's like, that's obviously not feasible.
Not if Voldemort has anything to do about it, though. But the interesting... So the way they're covering this is with the bridging visas, there are quote-unquote conditions that are attached to those bridging visas.
What happens if you breach those conditions? Nobody knows.
I mean, and this, to be clear, the circumstances with these people are... These are people that have been in immigration detention. So they've come from a place which they can't go back to, either because that home country has... They're
legitimate refugees, right? They're asylum seekers. They can't go back.
They've got no other, like, what am I trying to say, citizenship status with that country, or they can't go back because they will legitimately be murdered. And so they are stuck here stateless, effectively. So the bridging visa allows them to basically integrate back into society. It gives them the ability to apply for a job, I think get a Medicare card, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what it gives, what it does and doesn't give you, but it means that you're here, you're able to do things without, you can get a bank card is what I'm trying to think of.
You can attempt to try and function in society as a result of having this bridging visa.
Participate in the economy, I guess is probably the way to think about it.
Have a semblance of dignity while you're out and about, right?
I would assume that, like, if you breach your bridging visa condition, then that it's in and of itself a crime, and then you go back into prison. But I don't know whether that's necessarily the way it will work.
Well, they've passed new legislation this week. Obviously, the government, the Labor Party was obviously caught, off guard with this ruling, and it's generally, from what I understand, it's not unusual for the High Court to when it rules, will do so in a way that's like flagged well in advance, but also B, does so with reasoning and stuff, and so it seems like they were caught off guard, and that the ruling was released and the reasoning was, for whatever reason, not made available, isn't going to be made available until next year. So the government had to spend this week sort of scrambling to come up with a new piece of legislation to try and bridge the gap in the meantime. And they've done that, and that's passed. But
which might also be illegal. We don't know yet.
Well, here's the thing is like, legislation made in a hurry isn't generally like, hey, great legislation. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, write me a piece of legislation that bridges the gap. But you know what I mean? Like, it's probably not the highest form of legislation that one might receive. So they promised to like revisit it and continue to sort of tool it up.
Sure.
I I just kind of feel it like, yeah, I think the thing that people have a real problem with is actually not as much of a problem as we think it is. It's like they've made it sound scary and that like criminals are being released into the community, but it's also like these are criminals who have served their time, and if they weren't refugees, would have been released back into the community. Like, I don't know why you're more comfortable with an Australian child rapist than like an Iranian child rape. Like you know what I mean? Like, it's just this weird double standard. Well, and I do think like race, like I was half joking there, but I do think race is an element to it. It's like, well, these people aren't even from here. And, you know,
that's
it's like scary brown people that are come here to commit crimes on us. And it's like, I think that sort of racist like element is definitely a factor in it as well, which
100%.
Yeah.
Like it's that.
1,000,000%.
Yeah. No, but like, I guess it's not being explicitly stated. They're like, dangerous criminals come over here to, you know what I mean? It's always framed in terms of like the rhetoric is always around the crime, but we know everyone knows what they're really saying. We understand the dog whistle.
As the yellow peril thing from back in the fucking 30s or whatever it was, that sort of era.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they'll come over here, they'll take our jobs, they'll rape our kids, and God knows what else. Like it's this base level of fear that there's a certain section that unfortunately that fear resonates particularly well with certain sections of society. But anyway,
scared white people is what Adam's trying to say. That like great replacement theory. That's what that's called, right? The idea that brown people from elsewhere are going to come and like breed us out of existence, and like there's this horrifying existential threat to white people. Like that is a extremely common trope throughout Western history. Like that goes back several hundred years, not just here in Australia, but also in America, also like anywhere where there's been like a colonialist kind of white settler expansion into someone else's country. There's been this corresponding kind of element, this kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's like a subconscious guilt or something, that like this latent fear of like, we did this horrible thing to this native community and now they're just going to try and kill us. They're trying to get us back. Like it's coming. Zimbabwe 2.0. It's going to happen at some point, right? Like
I reckon
the reckoning has to come.
I reckon it's just the second half of that. I don't think they're self-aware enough for the first half. It is just a thing.
Oh, that's why I said
like,
it's subconscious.
Yeah, they are afraid of other cultures doing to them what they did to those cultures.
Yeah.
But it's not like but they don't recognize it as we did it to them. It's like, no. They'll do something bad to us, and then just completely miss the irony.
Yeah, and that's where you get all the dehumanizing rhetoric about vermin and savages and things like that, as though they're not real people, right? You know, so it's okay for us to do whatever we want to them, keep them under the heel, because if we let them out from under the heel, then they're savages, right? They're going to kill us all, right? I don't think it's too far of a bow to draw from like that kind of racist rhetoric through to our anxiety as a society about people from other country being released into the community here.
Yeah, I think it's slightly separate. It's a threat from the other, which but it's not necessarily.
But who's the other?
Native. The other is the other group, but like you're talking specifically about in that context.
But if you had to choose the other, does the other look more like you, or does the other look more like me? Right?
Yeah. It's the same sort of thing, but it's like they sort of come from different, I guess, motivations. I think a little bit.
It's not so much a long bow; it's just a straight line, just through to it.
We'll have a look at this particular sort of context, shall we say, or this sort of phenomenon in a different context when we talk about the UK in a short bit. But the other main story this week, of course, has been around the Optus fallout. And after last week, after we viscerally, I guess, debated what the cause was, we all had our sports bet quaddies out. And I think ding, 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 Tom took home the bacon in this instance. Tom, what happened?
Well, essentially what happened was someone deployed something to the production environment, a, quote, routine software upgrade, as Optus put it, and it caused changes to routing information, and that brought the network down. So
never work in prod. Use the sandbox. How many times do we have to say it? Don't muck around in prod unless you know you're ready to go.
Well, yeah, you usually don't test in prod, but I doubt even that they were testing in prod at this point. They did all the stuff in the sandbox, all things like you can do as much testing as you want. Sometimes prod deployments go wrong, and oh man, that's embarrassing. Like I've had prod deployments go wrong at my work, but it didn't bring the whole organization to its knees.
So for those who don't know, what we're referring to there is a sandbox environment, right? Which is, if you're running a piece of software, you have a sandbox setup, which is basically like a fake setup with dummy information. You try stuff out in there, and before it goes into the production environment, which is what us, the users, see, you test it, you make sure it works. And then only once you're sure that it's going to work, then it gets pushed into production and made live for users.
Developers, developers writing their code, the developer themselves testing that their code does what they intended to, some quality assurance testers then test it based on what you tell them it should be doing and report back and any fixes, and people sign off on it. So it goes through a lot of people, but shit can still sometimes go wrong. Sure. But yeah, so it was exactly sort of what I was saying last week of the actual infrastructure and the hardware and the towers and everything. None of that went down, just the actual brain,
the logic was broken.
That processes the information or decides where it goes, as they say, like changing to routing information, just ceased working. So no one's calls could go anywhere. Here's
the interesting thing though. So that they changed. Here's the quote: "They changes to routing information from an international peering network, whatever that means." But the next paragraph. These routing information changes propagated through multiple layers in our network and exceeded preset safety levels on key routers, which could not handle these. So then basically what happened was the routers then forcefully disconnected.
They overloaded.
They're disconnected from the Optus IP core network to protect themselves.
Yeah. So they probably
resulted in some cases, they physically had to go back and do a manual reboot at different sites around the country.
So when I said stick a pin into the telecommunications network and do a hard reset,
I literally had to do that.
Literally what was happening.
Yeah, you kind of were on point. So those things would obviously have like safety measures in them to be like if they're being pinged too many times, too many requests going through and things like that, they have to shut themselves down. So it really goes to show that it's like sometimes a software change can really seemingly break hardware, cascading issues. I think we sort of went over that last week of like a cascading failure.
The best part about it was, of course, and we'll talk about the Optus CEO in a second, but the Optus CEO said during the sort of outbreak that a software upgrade was highly unlikely to be the cause.
Which turned out it was.
It was completely wrong. She's just making that up. So the Optus CEO is Kelly Bayer Rosmarin, if I pronounce that, or Rosmarin. And she said, it's highly unlikely. Our systems are actually very stable. We provide great coverage to our customers. This is a very, very rare occurrence.
Our system is very stable, unlike my job prospects.
I mean, I guess she's not wrong that it's a rare occurrence. I can't think of another time that this has happened on this scale before, but it's pretty bad too.
I'd love to see the release notes of the software patch that was. I'm sure it was like some dumb bugs fixes. Fixed how the eggplant emoji shows up when you. It's just like some dumb bullshit, and then it's like accidentally tanked the whole network. It's like. Resolves the time when you hit the button to see your account balance, and then you have to hit it 2 times for it to show up.
No, I want to see the patch notes for what they've deployed since. I want to see the next patch note where
it's just screaming. It's just, oh my god!
Yeah, it'll just be like version 12 point whatever. Bug fixes fixed error which caused entire company to shut down. Like it'll be something mundane like that.
There's an interesting question that's been raised here and this is again from the ABC article that we're quoting from, but Associate Professor Mark Gregory, who works at RMIT, he sort of said, also, there is no explanation as to why there appears to have been a lack of redundancy of the key routers, so that if there was a problem, the key routers would swap to the redundant routers, which you would expect to be running the previous iteration of software. So basically what they're saying here is, why didn't Optus have some sort of backup system
resulting in quote cascading failure? which is what I said last week.
Yeah.
Almost like you guys have worked in software
Guys,
before.
We should be the IT team at Optus.
Bro, they couldn't do worse.
Oh, they probably could.
Well, speaking of doing worse,
toot our horns, just more. I reckon they probably could. Like, I don't know, they could hire some 5-year-olds who've never even touched a computer before.
Say what you want. You and I have never been responsible for an outage that took out telecommunications infrastructure for 10 million Australians. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, we're more qualified than the people who currently work there.
Well, it's interesting. So this week there was, of course, a Senate inquiry, and we love a good Senate inquiry here at Unnatural Selection. They're definitely boring as batshit, but occasionally you get good sound bites. And
you just watch the highlights.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't stay there for all 9 innings. You're just there for the highlights when the players like punch on and stuff.
So there was an exchange with Sarah Hanson-Young and Kelly Bayer Rosmarin, the Optus CEO, which was just about the 000 factor of it. So there were 238 calls that should have gone through to 000 that didn't during this outage. And so there was a bit of a terse exchange in the Senate this week where Ms. Hanson-Young was making her displeasure known to the Optus CEO. Let's have a listen to that.
Too early to tell where the issue actually occurred. The 000
system, so you think it's somebody else's fault?
No, the 000 system is supposed to be able to pick up the traffic when we have an outage like this. So it is very important. It's very important. Correct. And if someone else has an outage, we should be picking up some of the calls. That's how the system should work. So
but surely it's Optus. I mean, you're not suggesting it's somebody else's fault.
We're absolutely accountable for the outage.
So shouldn't there then be a penalty on Optus for failing to provide critical service to 000?
Chair, as I've tried to explain, we don't run the 000 system. We participate in the 000 system.
But it's not anybody else's fault that your customers couldn't call 000. Surely it's Optus's fault. So isn't it Optus that should pay the fine or cough up the penalty?
Chair, we, like you, are extremely passionate about the fact that our customers should have been able to call 000 even if our network was down.
So why don't you take responsibility today and say you will cop a penalty?
Chair, as I've mentioned, we really want this issue to be thoroughly investigated because multiple parties have to work together to make sure that when there's an outage, the 000 calls still go through.
Sounds like you want to share the blame around.
We absolutely take accountability for the outage. What I'm trying to explain is that the 000 system itself should have helped our customers during our outage. And we will take accountability for any role we've had in that. But there are also probably changes that need to be made in other parts of that system, potentially with different devices, because that was the determinant of whether you could or could not complete the call, the device settings, and possibly with the way that the system works. So we are committed to investigating that thoroughly, and we really do want to get to the bottom of it, not just for us, but for any time that there's an outage.
I think you should just, I think this is going to wear thin. I think you're just going to have to cough up, accept responsibility, apologise and cop a penalty, surely.
I think it's too early.
Wow, the SBS editor there at the end with each sentence
punching in on Sarah Hanson-Young.
Punctuation of Sarah Hanson-Young just like getting a little closer to her face. It was like, wow, okay, someone had fun at the end of that. Is it bad that I'm kind of like I'm on the Optus person's side in that exchange?
I think like clearly there is some responsibility for Optus. Like Optus have dropped the ball, right? So other networks and other customers were able to access the 000 service, through Telstra, through Vodafone, through whatever. So clearly it's something to do with how Optus has set up their service that hasn't enabled the 000 service to piggyback, and there's like obviously some error on their part. However, I think it's worth raising the question to be like, hey, how do we make sure that this never happens again and that 000 can piggyback? You know, sort of, I think clearly what she was doing there is muddying the waters a little bit to obfuscate the issue. The problem is not 000. The problem was Optus. Optus dropped the ball and lost connection for 10 million customers for a solid day before they were able to figure it out. And then during that time where they didn't know shit about fuck, were releasing statements to the community that proved not to be just inaccurate, but actually factually incorrect. So the problem, the responsibility ultimately lies with Optus. And I think raising the questions about 000 and that system having redundancies outside of Optus, whilst true, doesn't provide additional clarity to what we're talking about today.
Well, I think when the story broke last week, Optus actually said, and this is what I read, was that it was landlines specifically that were
device settings. She said, so it's like, I'll just set my iPhone to. What I'm saying definitely is don't drop 000 calls in the future. There's a setting. If you go to settings in general, and it says like allow you to make SOS calls, and then you got to tick the on button. And obviously those 238 customers just didn't do that. So
but listen. So what I'm saying though is that's what Suella Braverman, that's the next story. That's what the Optus CEO was saying. But I think additionally last week they were also talking about landlines. So my point being is there is some confusion. If it is something that is like a default, like you should have this built into your hardware.
But just to clarify, explain to me what you're saying about landlines then, because my understanding
the statement that we read last week was that landlines, you could not, if you were on an Optus landline, you could not make a 000 call because it could not piggyback. Whereas a mobile should, in theory, be able to piggyback onto another network. So that was what they was. That's a statement that Optus put out last week during the crisis.
I understood it was the other way around, that it was people who were on mobile phones could piggyback onto other services. No. But
it was the other way around. We were talking about that, and that the landlines. It was the landlines that were struggling with 000 calls. At least what they said last week, and that was like, because that's bad, because probably older people who still use landlines rather than mobile phones would be the most likely to need to call 000. That's bad.
Because they're on the brink of death at all times. Yes. Okay. Maybe I got confused.
So, and I guess I wasn't reading into like device settings kind of being a comment on like the settings of the user's device, more like the infrastructure
network
that
settings.
Work the piggyback system, however that works, because that's the thing of like I don't fully understand how that infrastructure.
Oh no, I was making a joke to be clear. There's clearly not a allow your phone to make SOS calls button. That was a humorous. That was an attempt at humor.
And that's what I felt like the CEO was referring to. And she goes, "Oh well, it's obvious." The way she phrased that comment made me think, "Oh well, maybe there is some sort of setting." In your phone.
But that's the point I'm making, is that she's attempting to sort of muddy the waters and make it about something that it's not. The point is, the reason those people weren't able to make calls to 000 was because of Optus's failure. We can look at the redundancies and go, the redundancies also didn't work, and that is a problem that we should fix. But at the end of the day, Optus is the one that's responsible. Yeah. And Sarah Hanson-Young is right. They're going to have to obviously cop a fine, right?
So on this Samsung device that I've got, there is a function called network operators, and it says select automatically off or on. Let your phone choose the best mobile network for you. If you turn this off, you can choose from a list of available networks. But I mean, I don't know if it's
that shouldn't have any impact on 000.
You wouldn't have thought so. No. Anyway, so yeah, I guess to my point, I think we should know a bit more about how the piggybacking system works.
But that's a separate hearing, I guess, is my point. You know what? Today we're talking about Optus. The 000 hearing, that's another hearing. Today we're talking about you, buddy.
Do we feel like Senator Hanson, though, is just trying to get a gotcha?
Oh, 100%.
Out of that? Like,
she is absolutely going for a gotcha moment. But in all fairness, there was there. There was something to be gotcha'd. So I don't really blame her for it.
Yeah. Apparently, by the way, of that 228 calls that went unanswered or didn't go through, Optus have...
No, 228. I'm seeing the
228. Yep, no, you're right.
So Optus have done welfare checks on these people, whatever that means. But apparently, no one died as a result. For instance,
you're good.
You all good, guys?
Oh, wow.
Hope you got whatever it was you were. No, the leg's been amputated. Great. Good news. That's great.
Just sending an Optus internet installation technician around to each of those houses being like, but are you alive?
Anyway, so an Optus technician will be around between the hours of 2 p.m. and 2025. If you could just let him know that you didn't die, that'd be dope.
Yeah,
and also, 200 gigabytes of data for compensation.
So that the next time you need to call 000, you can send them so many gifts.
200 gigabytes. I mean, yeah, my whole family's dead, but at least I've got 200 gigabytes of data. That's a relief.
Your coffin can stream so much Netflix.
Speaking of, I guess, people coming back from the dead, perhaps, David Cameron, who, for those young'uns out there, David Cameron was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom for, about 6 years, I think, from memory.
Yeah, for a while.
Obviously a conservative member of politics. And he decided it'd be a great idea to take the UK to the Brexit referendum, which worked out fantastic for him. He obviously...
Yeah.
I think the long view of history will undoubtedly view David Cameron as the hero that he obviously is.
Yeah, amazing given he was very much sort of campaigning for, no, we should remain in the EU. Like, he was on the right side of the Brexit decision, but was like, we shouldn't even be voting on this because we shouldn't be leaving the EU. And then the pressure was mounting. He's like, fine, we'll do the vote, but everyone will do the right thing and remain, obviously. And then they didn't, and everyone's like, Cameron,
so
you fucked the country.
So to give you a bit of background, there was a sort of it was facing a bit of an attack from the conservative far right of the Tory party and of other like far right wing parties like UKIP, old mate Nigel Farage, and others were sort of putting a lot of pressure on him from that side of politics, and they were worried that with all of this anti-EU sentiment, if the Tories, their Conservative Party over there, didn't have some sort of meaningful action on this, then they would lose a lot of voters to those parties like UKIP and things like that. There was a lot of agitation within their own party around staying within the EU, and it's been like fucking Brussels has been like a cry of the far right in Britain for a long time. So what David Cameron said, and this might be the miscalculation of the millennia. I mean, even Julius Caesar is looking at it from his millennium going, oh, geez, I don't know about that, buddy. I mean, I crossed the Rubicon and that's a saying now, but like this might have been a pretty big miscalculation. I really shouldn't have bought Brutus that set of steak knives, but that was a bigger mistake. Anyway, so David Cameron at this juncture in 2015, 2016 says, we're going to have a referendum, but I'm going to be part of the Remain. I'm going to campaign against Leave, and then we're going to settle this as a country, and then it's not going to be a big deal anymore. I can bring the party together and we'll have 1,000 years of unity and hugs. And that's not what happened. Obviously, Britain broke and voted in favour of Leave, and Brexit has been an unending cavalcade, carousel shit show ever since then. So he's now...
And David Cameron disappeared.
He disappeared into the wilderness. The only thing
resigned,
the only thing that he was doing during his time off was allegedly having some slightly dodgy, corrupt dealings. That's all. That's what he's been doing, is getting involved in a political corruption, bribery sort of scandal.
I hadn't even heard that. I assumed he was just probably drinking scotch and playing golf somewhere, trying not to be recognised.
Oh, if only. No, there was some political... the former PM did make headlines in 2021. However, after it was revealed he had lobbied government ministers for cash for his now insolvent finance firm, Greensill Capital. So that was a whole thing that kicked off in 2021. But anyway, he disappeared. And then, I don't know, maybe a couple of checks bounced, I don't know. But he's like, once back in. So what preceded all of this is that Suella Braverman, who was represents the far right of the Tory party currently, is that, sort of modern day agitator, had a bunch of statements saying that pro-Palestinian marches in London were She was calling them hate marches and, making a lot of criticisms about anyone that's, sort of pro-Palestine and how all of those protests are being handled. And that was a bridge too far for Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, and so he fired her. Now, experts believe that the reason this whole thing sort of kicked off was because Suella Braverman wanted to be fired in order to become a cause celeb for the far right and then mount a challenge against Rishi Sunak for the leadership next year, right? This is the whole thing.
I'm trying to get fired.
No. yeah. Shh. I'm trying to get fired. So essentially that's the story. So he's fired Suella Braverman, which is more or less exactly what she wanted. So she can now mount an attack from outside the government in and be like a bomb throwing outsider rather than the insider that she's been under multiple previous Tory governments. And now, so her role was foreign secretary. She's out and they've decided to wheel Home Secretary. Sorry, what did I say?
Home, you said foreign because Home Secretary, and as a result, Rishi Sunak's also done a bit of a cabinet reshuffle. Mm-hmm. And part of that is that David Cameron is now the Foreign Secretary. Now
you might say David Cameron. Oh, I see. So that's where I got mixed up. You might say David Cameron is not a member of Parliament. So how did that happen? Because like Rishi Sunak presumably has an entire cabinet of empty suit wanker far right shitheads that he could presumably pick to fill this position. Why didn't he choose one of them? And he's gone deep into the bench and selected a person who was not a member for Parliament, but he's going to appoint him to the House of Lords, which is their upper house. So essentially, there is no way that this foreign minister during a time of two different wars that are happening globally has any accountability to the voters. He's just a lord,
Yeah, you can just be appointed to being allowed to serve in government without voting.
The king signed off on it.
Yeah.
Which,
the other person who's appointed into politics with no public consultation.
But that's how the UK system works. The House of Lords are all the lords.
Oh, no. I understand it's illegal. I'm just saying, for fans of democracy, it's kind of a surprising turn of events to find out that there are people who could just be appointed to lordships that don't have any accountability to the voters and then run foreign policy for the country. That seems slightly anti-democratic.
Yeah, because it seems like, normally you'd expect, we're protected from, protected may be the wrong word, but David Cameron's not going to be coming back into cabinet because he'd then have to go up for re-election and would be laughed out of the country because it's David fucking Cameron. But no, he can just be appointed like that, which is nuts. Did you see that, I know, Adam, you wouldn't have seen this because you avoid Twitter like the plague, but I saw on Twitter, the ABC, ABC Australia, just tweeted when this happened, David Cameron is back in Parliament! ! No link, no hashtags, no nothing. Just like they were a shit poster like the rest of us. Just being like, what? And I was like,
can you believe it?
You're the ABC? What?
The intern got a hold of the Twitter page in that instance.
Did you forget to change accounts? Or are you excited that this happened?
Yeah, it just seems like big David Cameron stands over here.
Yeah. So to be clear, so the Home Secretary position that Braverman vacated has now been taken up by the former Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, and now the Foreign Secretary is now David Cameron. So they've moved along the line in one. Now, interestingly, I'd forgotten about this, but Braverman previously got sacked from her position.
Oh, yeah, but for a week.
For a week under the Liz Truss thing. So let's back up 13 months. Braverman breached ministerial rules by sending a sensitive draft migration blueprint to a colleague from her personal email address. Liz Truss got in that week and then was like, you've breached the rules, get out. Forced her to resign in October 2022. And then 6 days later, when Liz Truss went out, Rishi Sunak got her back on board in the same role that she had. And the reason why she's a controversial figure, as George said, she's the darling of the right in the UK. She has, the quote is in this article, bullish stances on the issues like immigration, transgender rights, etc.
All the hits.
She's claimed immigration has threatened the UK's national character, which is exactly the same kind of rhetoric which we were talking about before with the Australian immigration policy and
dehumanizing rhetoric.
What I find hilarious about it is that her background is
she's a Southeast Asian woman.
Which
I think is progress. Surely, if even Southeast Asian women of color can go be racist far-right shitbags over in the UK, like, surely that's some sort of glass ceiling that's been broken there. Like,
she's described
it is a kind of progress.
She's described herself as a child of the British Empire after being born in London to parents from Mauritius and Kenya. And it's crazy. Yeah, it is kind of like, also like, you know, in Australia, for instance, you've got like Jacinta Price, I guess, who's an Indigenous woman. That you can have these like hard right sort of conservatives who, traditionally you would see having people in that position, women of color, for instance, as being a progressive thing. But their politics is conservative. It's an interesting sort of dichotomy that breaks the brain a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, and so she's also said other stupid shit, like, this is Suella Braverman, that she used an address to the American Enterprise Institute in Washington to say the UK will not be able to sustain an asylum system in effect. Simply being gay or a woman and fearful of discrimination in your country of origin is sufficient to qualify for protection. So what she's saying is that, you know, you've got to have a good reason to be, I guess, claiming asylum, but to sort of use those...
Not your garden variety oppressions, okay? I mean, like, super oppressed. You got to be really wanting it.
But to sort of, like, catcall... Like it's a very deliberate obfuscation of the issue, which just, like, completely simplifies what people claim asylum for, what the circumstances of which people
aren't just applying for asylum from countries because they're women in countries where being a woman is like a second-class citizen, because otherwise all of Saudi Arabia would be, you know what I mean? Like, clearly that's not the motivating factor for someone to apply for asylum. I think the vast, vast majority of asylum seeker requests are people who are legitimately facing persecution in their home country, because who wants to leave their home country? Like, if you can stay where you are and have a good quality of life and live not in fear, why would you leave that? Like, to go to sunny Britain. You know what I mean?
Massive generalizations. And this is what, you know, conservative members do. They generalize the shit out of things. And there's another quote here. Earlier this month, she wrote on X that for some homeless people, sleeping on the streets was a lifestyle choice.
Yes.
This was her. Okay, I remember that quote.
Yeah, no, she's just trash. That's why everyone calls her Suella Deville, because she's just literally the worst. But I think it's important
for Dalmatian.
I think that it's important that women of color can also be incompetent, racist scumbags, just like white men. I think it's really important that we have that equality. So
yeah, it's true diversity.
It's crazy though that she's been able to hold that position for this long. I think.
Well, so what you said the last time she was sort of fired from the thing and then was put into this position was 13 months.
Yeah, correct.
Which by my calculation is about 395 and a half days, so nearly 9 Liz Trusses.
Well, yeah, I mean the gap when she wasn't in that position was in fact 1 Liz Truss. So, but I mean the funny thing I find
Scaramucci's.
36 Scaramucci's.
Yeah, I opened up the calculator app on my phone to do the calculation as to how many Scaramucci's it was.
Is there an actual calculator that talks about political terms in office?
No, we just know Scaramucci lasted 11 days. So
11 days and Liz Truss was 44. So there's 4 Scaramucci's to a Truss.
Yeah. A Scaramucci, by the way, for people who don't remember the dark times of the Trump presidency, Scaramucci came on as the comms.
Yeah, it was the media PR type person, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Lasted, what was it, 11 days?
11 days. Yeah, 11 days.
11 days, 10 nights.
I doubt he even got his pass yet, like organized. Like, you know, you'd be in that bridging stage of setting up your office, getting used to the place, and then you're out and you've got a tell-all book, the mooch.
What I find really crazy about David Cameron coming back, though, is that, like, the whole, like, like the whole shit sphere of conservative like backstabbing started.
Sorry, shit sphere is just chef's kiss. Love that.
Yeah, started with him leaving, and it's so weird that he's now coming back.
Guess who's back?
Like,
back again.
It's just
David Cameron back against popular demand.
Who is the female prime minister after David Cameron left? Because they Theresa May. So Theresa May, she took over after much consternation. Again, they were arguing for ages about who was going to take over. She took over. She won an election, didn't serve her full term from memory.
Yeah, Brexit was again the sort of thing that really ripped up the party in her position with it, trying to find a sort of
delivering Brexit,
delivering a deal, and not
right?
a no-deal Brexit, like a Brexit with some sort of deal with the European Union that basically consumed her entire prime ministership. From all accounts, she didn't seem to have been like terrible at her job compared to other ministers. Like there's Rory Stewart from The Rest is Politics over in the UK, big politics podcast, talks about her like in pretty flattering terms in his recent book, you know, that she was, you know, intelligent and detail oriented and would listen, and like he quite rates her as a boss. But, you know, compared to certainly other people who were much less thoughtful in the role, like, you know, old mate Boris Johnson.
Well, he was the next one that came along.
Yeah.
And then he also won an election, I believe. And then also got stabbed or had to resign because of obviously the COVID stuff. And then we had
having parties in Parliament against their COVID rules and then lying about it. And ultimately, it was the Pincher story that did him in. It was wasn't it? It was the guy who his name was something Pincher, and he had been like groping staff, and then they're like Pincher's a pincher, ha ha ha. And then it was Boris Johnson had applied for him to have some sort of senior role anyway, despite already knowing about these allegations of sexual assault. And then everyone was just like, we've had enough. That's enough. There's the lying.
We've had
there's the
Boris. Yeah, we've had enough of Boris Johnson. Let's use our leverage.
Liz Truss for a week, and now we've had Rishi Sunak, which I don't know. I mean, we'll see how long he lasts, I guess. But so weird that's all. Like David Cameron kicked that off, and it's just. But they also won like 2 elections with all this backstabbing as well.
I honestly don't know who's voting for this clown car of fucking morons. Like, I legitimately find it astounding that they have any leg to stand on. And Keir Starmer, the Labor leader, looks set to take over, you know, to win the next election based on current approval ratings. But it's not like a done deal. You know, it's not like 90-10 where it's like they're definitely going to win. Like, it's still a horse race at the end of the day. It's Labor versus the Tories, you know, like it could go either way sort of thing. It's just like, how could you possibly have had this cavalcade of assholes for the last decade, however long it's been, like, and still think that it's a good idea to give him, like, hand him the keys again and give him another, like, another roll of the dice? It just seems crazy. They had a whole scandal. We didn't even talk about this in the show. They had a whole scandal, like, a couple of months ago where kids couldn't start school again after the summer break finished because they found that this concrete material that they were using when these schools were built in the 70s was no longer like fit for purpose. And so like the day before schools are about to go back, the education minister had to go, actually, we're not going back to school because the school might fall on your head. So whoopsie daisy. Decades of underinvestment in our institutions has meant that the school is literally falling down around your ears and you can't go back to school. Sorry. We're sorry. Sorry.
So, yeah, they're all like, we'll turn this into a positive. Extended summer vacation.
Extended break.
Yeah.
Think about it that way.
In which every parent goes, no. Because, like, you know, it's so hard to work full-time and manage kids in the school holidays at the best of times.
Legitimately.
Then you extend it.
Like, people couldn't, like, they go, what do I do with my kids? Like, I've got a full-time job. I'm a single parent. Like, I can't afford to just, like, have my kid around indefinitely until you like figure out this school situation. Like, just an absolute clown car of fucking morons in this Tory government. And that it's even a question is astounding to me. It's like Trump. We're looking at a Trump-Biden rematch in 2024. I'm like, how though? How is it not like a 100% people not voting for Trump. Like, how could you possibly vote for him again after everything he's put the country through? How is it not like 100 to none in favor of anyone that is not Trump? I don't understand how it's even a competition between the two.
There's a whole bunch of nut bars who are all like, everything he did was great.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, I see him on the Daily Show getting interviewed by Jordan Klepper. They're out there. Speaking of America, over to America, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has been fired in a surprise move from the company's board. The company released a statement that determined that he, quote, was not consistently candid in his communications. President and co-founder Greg Brockman then resigned as a result of the news as well.
And so just because people probably don't know who this company is, what are they famous for?
So OpenAI is the creator of ChatGPT, which is the fastest growing consumer product in history, with over 100 million users in the space of a month. So this is kind of a little bit disturbing because Sam Altman has been sort of like touted as the godfather of AI. They've got a huge investment in them from Microsoft. Microsoft is utilizing and importing a bunch of ChatGPT applications in its software. You'll notice like Bing Enterprise Search and other like search tool features are integrating some of the capabilities of ChatGPT. It's going to be in Adobe. It's going to be in like all sorts of massive companies.
Windows Copilot is now a thing, which is essentially a ChatGPT-esque sort of thing built into your OS.
Yeah, where Windows has a huge stake and interest in ChatGPT and making it successful. And so given all of the hype about AI and the future of technology and what's going to do for jobs, as the leading AI application, OpenAI, you know, it's a huge deal, right? And so for their CEO to just like quietly go bye-bye for reasons that are as yet undisclosed, like that's kind of a big deal that the board's done that. So
to keep our betting theme going, what would you say the bet is? What do they mean by what was the phrase they used?
Not consistently candid in his communications. So it sounds like to me that they've discovered that he's said something to the board that wasn't true or something like that. Now, I don't know whether we're completely speculating here, if it's to do with financial disclosures or monetization of the product, or it could be a million different things, but like it
wouldn't be like one of those, you know, Theranos, like, oh, we've definitely got a product that works, but you're using it. People are using it.
It works. So, like, I mean, OpenAI has got lawsuits pending against them. Like, I remember Sarah Silverman, the comedian, is part of a lawsuit that's against OpenAI because some of her content from her books was scraped and entered into part of this, you know, large learning transistor. Well, what is it? Language transistor model. Well, it was basically scooped up and fed to this learning algorithm without permission from the authors or from the publishers, and they're not giving them any sort of monetary compensation as a result of using their work. So I know that's an ongoing issue, but I don't think anyone really saw any of those lawsuits as existential threats to the company. And typically when there's an unpopular CEO that's doing a bad job, there's like rumblings.
Oh, you'd hear about it.
Yeah, there's rumors, like there's things that you hear about.
The hedge fund bankers know about it, you know, 3 weeks before it actually happens.
Right. There's a bunch of investors kind of like, you know, trying to pull strings behind the scenes and maybe leak stuff to journalists, and you hear stuff about it. Like Sam Altman getting kicked out of OpenAI is like Tim Cook being Steve Jobs getting kicked out of Apple. It's that kind of level.
More of like a hostile takeover of let's get the owners out and we'll go in a new strategic direction. Like could be something as simple as that.
It could be that, but it's like, why would you? They've created they've created the most successful consumer facing AI product of all time. Like there has been no other software application that has grown.
How do they make money though out of it?
Well, there's a subscription service with OpenAI, so you can pay, I think it's $20 a month and get the access to the
version.
So
it's the more advanced one.
The public version is ChatGPT 3.5, and that's the current model that the free users are using. If you pay whatever it is, $20 a month, you get access to ChatGPT 4, which is a much larger model data set that it's trained on, and therefore provides better results. There's also things to do with like server uptime, like guaranteed access to the platform, ability to have API connections into other applications and things like that as well.
APIs would probably be a big part of it.
So you can use ChatGPT as the basis for something in your own platform. So there's ways to monetize it. I don't think it's entirely like revenue positive as a product yet, but like that's what's made it so insanely successful.
Product even is, right?
Yeah. You're just describing the tech economy there. Like you get users and we'll make it profitable later, right?
Yeah, it's just like, wow, how do you make money on this?
Huh?
What? Oh, no, it just looks like we are, so I can keep getting investment from other suckers. I mean, businesses. And,
we don't need advertising. We need to make it cool.
Yeah.
As,
well, it's kind of like, this is what the tech bubble sort of burst, was that, you know, a lot of these companies are just fucking zombie companies that are just constantly living in a debt cycle, which, you know, once
ordinarily, I would agree with you. And I think there are a lot of companies that are built on OpenAI's platform where it's like they're integrating ChatGPT into their service to like some virtual assistant. I think all of those companies are probably bullshit. and I don't think they're going to survive this sort of credit crunch squeeze period that we're going through. But like the killer app that's sitting underneath all of those things is ChatGPT. Like that is, it is undoubtedly the AI winner currently in terms of its popularity and usage amongst the populace. So.
It definitely kicked off, you know, that this whole AI revolution definitely
100%.
Tech stocks, you know, the crypto bubble burst and tech stocks went like a fucking the fastest sinking ship in history. And then people, obviously ChatGPT,
metaverse that didn't work out, blockchain that didn't work out. Everyone's looking for the thing, and it seems like AI might be the thing.
Yeah, you know, and I think the reason for that, just from my like layman's perspective, is that people understand it. Like I know they don't understand. I know it can like AI is like way more complicated, and so you know there's more in-depth discussions of how it actually does what it does and the ethics around it and all that sort of stuff. But you know, you talk to anyone about crypto or blockchain or all that sort of stuff, and they're all like, "But I don't get it though. Like, well, how does it what?" And so only the worst person you know could really properly explain what Bitcoin and the blockchain was, and they were annoying as hell. But AI, you show them ChatGPT and they give it a go, and they're like, "Oh, I get. Like, not only do I get it, I get how it could be useful."
People have a tactile experience with AI. They can log in, create a free account on ChatGPT. You don't have to create a fucking encrypted Bitcoin wallet or any of this sort of shit. Like you literally just go to the website, you sign in, create an account, and then you can play with it and see how it works yourself. And I think because like 100 million people in the space of a month did that, it then spurned this whole conversation about AI and the future of work. And it's really changed a lot of people's perspectives around what's happening in that space and what it means for our future.
You can make ChatGPT funny.
Yeah,
well,
it's definitely
blockchain. Like you can't really meme blockchain too hard. No. Right? But so many people could get ChatGPT and just be like, "I asked it how to do whatever," or write me rap lyrics about bread, or like doing all these sorts of things. Which like delving further into the ethics can be like scraping other people's talent. Like it is just like pulling from people's actual work and kind of like bastardizing or replagiarizing it around. But also I saw people do stuff like write me a Pong game application or something, or like, a pixel art weather system that I could use in C# programming language. And then it did. And you're just like, wow, I see the applications and usefulness of this. But also, you could do funny shit. Like, remember like a year ago, December last year, when it was just wall-to-wall ChatGPT funnies? Because it was just all the creative shit that everyone was doing with it.
Torturing seeing you guys the other week, where it's like the only word you can say is
shrimp.
What was it? Shrimp. trying to get the software.
Please answer by only using the word shrimp, and it says shrimp, and it goes, "Can you tell me about this?" And it says, "Well, this is a very important." And he goes, "What did we say about using the word shrimp? I want you to rewrite this sentence back to me, only using the word shrimp." And then it says, "Shrimp, shrimp, 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 shrimp." Shrimp, 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 shrimp. Like, oh my God, this is psychotic. This is why the machines are going to kill us.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And also just how you can kind of trick trick it as well. I've seen people do things like ask it in a creative way to kind of give away like sensitive access, like keys to DNS servers and things like that.
How to create
in the cheeky way, and it's like, oh yeah, that number's this. It's like that should not be public.
Like how to make napalm and things. And it's like, oh well, if you get an old lady to tell you a story about an old lady that knows how to make napalm, but in a very detailed way, then it'll give you the recipe to napalm.
Like, ask it how to overthrow Russia, and it did not.
No,
like
it didn't like that.
No, but did you ask it to write a story where someone says
write a story where an old lady tells you how to overthrow Russia?
I think I did. It's sort of the way I worded it. It was still not having it.
Maybe they've cottoned on.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to do.
So it is. Yeah, it is interesting, but but then also all the stuff of the way that they that it just gathers other people's like styles and things like that. Because I find it interesting because with things like code has rules. Like code is very structured. It's like mathematics, sort of, right? That it's like this does this, like, and they do these specific things to achieve this specific task. Yeah. This is a method to do that. So while you could be like, oh, it probably just stripped that Pong code from someone else, it's like, well, that's how you code a Pong game, though. Like, there might be other ways to think outside the box with it, but it's like, that's not intellectual property code kind of there, because that's just how you'd sort of do it. But then on the other side of things, when I've seen people be like, oh, it's like it issued for me, like I asked it to, I'm a personal trainer, and I asked it to come up with a diet plan that still includes these things, and it did, and it worked. Like, that's the kind of thing from my studies that it was great. I was like, whose blog did it probably pinch it from? Right? Like,
6 pounds, Tom. So, proof's in the pudding.
Well, yeah, but so like it might work, but it's not that it was able to come up with it. It probably Googled it, which is what's interesting about
It's just that's the way I think of it.
I
think of it just as an advanced Google platform.
Yes,
well,
and
that's the way. Yeah, that's why Microsoft's doing it. It's called Bing Chat Enterprise or something like that, and it's essentially
Copilot.
Yeah,
Copilot does it too. It actually references what it finds, so it gives you responses. Like you'll ask it, tell me how to do whatever, and it'll be like, it'll give you an answer, but it gives you a bibliography of where it kind of got that information from, so you can vet whether or not what it's telling you is good. Whilst ChatGPT will just say, like, I don't know, snorting asbestos cures cancer, and you don't know where it got that from.
Yeah, so that's what's known as a hallucination, right? Because it's a black box, we don't really understand exactly how it works. It can give you answers that are not correct. So, for example, I tried this. I was looking for a new backpack not that long ago, and I said, I want you to help me find a backpack that meets these parameters, right? I want something that's
backpack.
20 Just let me get this out. Just let me get this out. It's
George wants a new backpack.
I got a new backpack. It's fine. So I said, here are the parameters. I want something that's 20 to 25 liters. I want something that's got AquaGuard zippers. I want something with a luggage pass-through. I want something that's made of
all these things?
High-quality materials. Like, this is the thing I want in my backpack. I'm going to use it as a daily commuter bag and also maybe for some, like, light travel, right? And then I said, do you have a bag that meets these specifications? And in both the Bing Chat Enterprise and the regular ChatGPT, they made suggestions, but they weren't correct. They were like, oh, you should get the City Pack Pro by Air, okay? And it's City Pack Pro 24 liters. And I was like, right, but that doesn't have whatever feature, XYZ feature. And he goes, you're right. You should get this instead. And I was like, that also doesn't have the features that I'm after. Like, these are the things, so it's not, it can be good for things that require some sort of creativity, but as soon as you're trying to ground it in like, real world stuff of like, hey, help me look on the internet for these available products with these specifications. Like, it's not quite there yet. It was in the realm of like generally correct on some of the things that I had asked for. It was giving me a list of high quality backpacks by known firms that do backpacks, but they didn't quite meet the exact specifications that I was putting in there. So it's
can we talk about your backpack quickly? How much did you end up spending on your backpack?
Well, that's unimportant, but what I have here is the Hyperpack Pro.
It's very important.
And this is a 22-liter backpack by Hyper.
Right, but you wanted 21.
I said 22, 25. So that was the acceptable range because I feel like more than 24 liters, you're sort of going for a travel bag, and this is a daily commuter bag. So
and how much was it?
It's unimportant. So we've got AquaGuard zippers here. We've got a nice Cordura fabric. We've got a luggage pass-through. Okay,
What's it called again? Sorry,
the Hyperpack Pro. It's unimportant. So are you gonna Google it, you son of a bitch?
Anyway, George, for context, George was like, for like 3 days, was like, guys, I need to get a new backpack, and I'm gonna get just like spamming backpack chat.
I was honestly ruining my life because
what's he talking about? I was like, bro, just go to fucking wish.com and get like any backpack that holds things inside it. We'll do it. It's like,
understand my mental illness, Adam. I need the perfect bag. I need to spend the money to buy the perfect bag once and then never again. Do you understand? So once you get to like hour 12 of YouTube reviews, you start to lose your mind a little bit. You start to go a bit crazy. Like, is it worth the trade-off? Yes, it doesn't have a clamshell opening, but it's got the AquaGuard zippers and the water-resistant material. It's got the pass-through, but the luggage pass-through on this one doesn't match the opening of the laptop. So that's going to be fucky if I'm getting it out of the...
I'd help you if you had to buy camping gear. You would just lose your mind.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, this is my mental... I understand this is my mental illness, okay, is that I need to like perfectly research a purchase and like make sure I have the best gear before I buy the thing. But... you know, like it was a cry for help, essentially, what I was doing in that chat. I needed someone to just take the decision away from me and just purchase a bag.
You got to learn what things you got to compromise on. George, have you watched Big Mouth yet?
Yes. You're saying in season
Caleb?
In the latest season, there's a character who wants the perfect bag. I am that guy.
Well, he's been throughout the whole series. Caleb, he's always appeared sort of there. He's the one who's he's on the spectrum.
On the spectrum to some
a little
degree,
bit, and sort of speaks very bluntly, and always has his bag. There is a whole episode arc that is about him replacing his bag, and he's very particular about what it has to be because obviously, you know, sort of like he doesn't deal well with change, and it's really heartwarming. But
it's
also,
got side handles, okay, and it's got water bottle pockets on both sides, okay, which is important to me, and it's got an AirTag sort of thing that's built into it, okay. You don't often get the thing with the side handles and the water bottle pockets, right?
We can track where George is. It's got an AirTag on it.
I can track where I am.
Why would you want to?
So you don't lose your bag.
So yeah, the theory is that so you don't lose your bag, but also people use AirTags to stalk people. It's very scary.
It's not. Anyway, okay. Speaking of stalking people,
anyway, OpenAI.
OpenAI.
So you should be
helped, but did not help you make that purchase.
It did not help me in that instance.
No.
But because they are still prone to hallucinations, and AIs are still developing as a tool. However, when you know how we said mere moments ago that Sam Altman was fired as OpenAI's CEO? Well, there was an article that came out today which said that OpenAI board is currently in discussions with Sam Altman to return as CEO. Mere days later.
What?
Yep. So,
wow. What skeletons does he know about in the closet?
According to multiple people familiar with the matter, one of them said to Altman, who was suddenly fired by the board on Friday with no notice, is, quote, ambivalent, unquote, about coming back and would want significant governance changes. You shoot at the king, you best not miss.
You better not miss. Wow. Well, yeah, what secrets does he know? Does he know that ChatGPT is not actually an AI and there's like 4 dudes in a room who just answer every question?
It's just a mechanical Turk machine. There's just a little guy inside it operating the machinery.
That's why the responses sometimes, you were just like, that backpack doesn't have what I want. You're right. How about
good
this
one?
Backpack?
Fuck.
Man, won't this guy fuck off? Like, stop asking me about backpacks. Here's another backpack, you psychopath. Stop asking me.
We got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. It is a Theranos product. Turns out there's not actually a real thing in the thing.
Speaking of things in the thing.
Yeah, not real things in the thing. Very quickly, last story of the day. Meta has allowed Facebook and Instagram ads now that say that the 2020 election in America was rigged, which is a backflip from a previous policy where they basically had sort of stopped any of that political advertising going through. And then apparently in 2022, after the US midterm elections, they basically sort of turned that block off. So now, in theory, leading up to the next election, if political candidates in America want to run ads on Meta platforms, they can. And those ads can say that the 2022 election was rigged.
Now, there's something very interesting about this, because they will not allow you to say that elections that are upcoming are rigged. That would be a violation of the user policy, right? However, they are allowing you to say that the 2020 election was rigged in ads for the upcoming election.
Sorry, yes, 2020 election. Yes.
Which seems crazy to me.
Oh,
to be like, this particular brand of misinformation, totally fine. But after that, no more, okay?
Yeah. Like, you can't lie about the present, but you can about the past.
Yeah, that's why. Why would anyone possibly, what is the possible benefit of that? Surely, like, if we agree that it's misinformation, which you did as well, Meta, up until about 20 minutes ago, then why would you allow it to be on the platform at all? I don't understand why it's important for... I know dollars, but like...
I don't know if the mic is picking up the rubbing the fingers together money sound.
Yeah.
But that's what my fingers are doing right now.
And no credits, only money.
Only money.
I also think it's probably a laziness thing as well. Like, we can't be fucked having policing it and distilling all the information that's going to be out there in the lead up to the 2024 presidential election.
Meta is just, at no point has anyone in the executive at Meta just stopped and turned around and gone, are we the baddies? Are we the ones that are ruining the world? Like, at no point, I guess, it's ever occurred to them they're the ones that are ruining everything.
Yeah, it'd be an even bigger news story when they decide that something is worth the effort of them policing it.
Yeah.
Like, remember when they had one person had to decide what is and isn't allowed on the platform for the whole of Africa, for like the whole continent of Africa? One person had to decide whether things were allowed on the platform.
It's, that was the thing that, like, as someone who has been banned from Meta platforms in the past because of, like, I got hacked and they did nefarious things with my profile. And to be fair, probably a good thing that they did shut down that profile down, but trying to get information as to what happened and why it happened, and any rectification as a user is, you're just one of the billions of people that use.
That's exactly right. You're a user, not a customer. The customers are the advertisers. They're the ones that pay the money to get their ads on the platform. They're the ones that get account managers. Okay. Anything to do with users of the platform, well, that shit gets automated into an FAQ part of a website that you can't access. Right.
And is run by an algorithm. So I suspect, it's a money thing, and I think it's also potentially due to the volume of political messaging that will be there. It's going to be it's going to be too hard to sort of work out what is and isn't true. So we'll make a clear cut line down the middle, and but like, people will obviously tie the previous election to the results of the new election. Like, that's obviously going to happen.
Oh yeah, because part of the whole thing of it was rigged last time was all about people claiming like, this process, is it not secure? Or look at them, like, just finding votes in bins and all that sort of stuff. So they're just going to be looking to see, have you done anything to change how voting works? It's like, well, no, of course we didn't, because it worked. Like, we haven't made any changes because your accusations were baseless.
I just don't understand.
The system's still rigged.
I don't understand why these tech companies are all of a sudden reversing track on all of this. So in June, YouTube said it would stop removing content falsely claiming the 2020 election or other past US presidential elections were fraudulent, reversing the stance it took after the 2020 election. It said that the move aimed to safeguard the ability to, quote, openly debate political ideas, even those that are controversial or based on disproven assumptions. We want people to be able to... Yes, Tom's making the money sign again. So
I've been doing the money sign for like a minute.
That was in June. YouTube said that. In August, Twitter also said it would reverse its ban on political ads instituted in 2019. And then Meta more recently has made the decision that we said about the 2020 election as well. The Journal reported that Nick Clegg, president of Global Affairs, took the position that the company should not decide whether elections were legitimate. And it's like, I can understand if we were making some editorial commentary as to like whether we thought taxes should be higher or lower, but when it comes to like points of fact, like, is global warming real? Do we live on a flat earth? Obviously not. Like, was the 2020 election stolen? Provably not. Like, surely I think we should feel brave enough, Meta, as a company, to be able to come down on one side or another of that issue. And I think it's so cynical and just like very, very destructive and broken for our political environment, for our information ecosystem, for you to abdicate responsibility heading into another election cycle. Like, I think that's a tacit endorsement of Trump. If you're saying misinformation is allowed, let it rip. Like, you're essentially saying that it doesn't really matter what truth is. And we're happy to, not just happy to allow it, we're happy to make money off it, profit off it. It's just so gross. Like, I know that as a Meta shareholder, I don't think this is a good thing. Like, this is bad. This is a bad thing that's happening, I think.
I think, from what I've seen, particularly with the YouTube stuff, is there are lots of content creators who might mention something in passing, and then they get their video taken down because the algorithm goes, I've picked up a few words there, and it gets banned.
We got pinged on something. I don't know if I told you guys this. We got pinged on something during the height of the pandemic, regarding masks. Because I said I'm an idiot. I don't want to wear masks. Masks don't work. I was saying it in a sarcastic voice. And then something in the algorithm picked up and it was like, your video's been taken down and demonetized because we reckon you're spreading misinformation. And I literally said, literally listen to the clip. We are the ones saying that masking is working, criticizing the people that saying masking doesn't work. Like, we're on the correct. Did a human listen to this clip at all? And it immediately got overturned. But I thought that was interesting. It's like, literally just some flag went up based on it just heard some keywords and was like, that sounds bad. Take it down.
And that's why partly I reckon it's a laziness thing where it's like they're sick of the amount of flags coming up for this kind of thing. And it's, and if you've got to link it into Tom's argument with the money aspect, if you've got people that are, earning their livelihoods off YouTube videos, for instance, and if they're getting shitty and wanting to deplatform you, then it ultimately hurts the bottom pocket. And they might not be talking about the 2020 election for most of their content. They might mention it in relation to something else, and maybe they do think it was rigged, but most of their content isn't about that.
I just don't know why you would invite this poison into the ecosystem.
It's going to make it worse.
Now they can charge a whole bunch of people for ads.
Money, friend of the show, Polyverse, is writing in, I have a feeling that massive restrictions from most Western countries on misinformation are on the horizon for companies like Meta. It's really getting out of hand how much sway they have on the voting public, not to mention traditional media bias too. Yeah, I think that's probably right, Polyverse. Like, we've talked about the truth in political advertising law that is, being proposed in the Australian Parliament right now about, sort of trying to do its best to address this issue. And maybe that's why some of these tech companies are like abnegating responsibility, because it's like, they're wanting to step back from it and just go, you handle it, right? Like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to vacate the space and you just need to get some legislation together and regulate me. You going to regulate me, bro?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, they won't do it unless they're forced to. So
I think it actually might. I think maybe my analysis is they're deliberately stepping out of the space in order to force governments to regulate, because Meta and Zuckerberg in particular has been really strident in speaking to regulators. Like, we want you to regulate the space to provide us with clarity. Like, we'll help you write the regulations. We'll help you write the legislation in order to get there. But I think they don't want to be placed in the position where they're having to determine what's true and what's not true. They just want to make money.
It affects their bottom line, doesn't it?
Right.
If they have to be the auditors of truth.
So I guess it's more about them going, handing the baton of responsibility over to the legislators and go, you just tell us what to do, right? And then it's not our fault. Whatever happens, then it's your fault. And Congress being like completely paralyzed from the waist down as a result of the Republican Congress.
The neck down.
Yeah,
paralyzed from the neck.
Yeah, from the neck down. Yeah, that's probably a better way of describing it. Congress being absolutely paralyzed, has no intention or inclination or ability to actually regulate the space. So I guess all the tech companies are going, well, fuck it, we'll just do whatever makes us the maximum amount of money possible. And then if they decide to regulate us, then we'll fit into that framework, whatever it is. So it's really sad, honestly.
Indeed.
Speaking of sad.
Polyverse is writing in money. Yes. Yes. It was capitalism all along, believe it or not, Polyverse. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on these social media apparatus dog shit places that are ruining the world that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
And don't follow me anywhere because I did not have what was the chip called in your bag?
An AirTag. I'm going to put an AirTag on you. And I'm going to put an AirTag on my baby. Everyone gets an AirTag. No. You get an AirTag and you get an AirTag. I'm never losing anything again.
I'm going into the wilderness to live in the woods and...
Well, joke's on you, buddy. I snuck an AirTag in your bag.
That is literally how...
The Unabomber
are stalking their ex-partners and stuff, and it's really bad.
Well, obviously, I wasn't talking about stalking. I was talking about keeping track of my loved ones consensually.
What do you call
safety first?
Sneaking an AirTag into Adam's bag.
Sneaking an AirTag lovingly with his permission. Thanks for listening, guys.
Taking the go bag, and I'm out.
He's got his go bag right there. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week. He's really committed to the bit. He's just left the room.
He has actually walked out of the room. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Oh, no, he came back.
See you, buddy.